Hi everyone, this video is part one of the motivation, emotion, and personality unit. This particular video will cover theories of motivation. And what I have found is when asking students why they take psychology, one of the many reasons is students want to know why people do what they do. And this part of psychology tries to address that question, which is motivation. What motivates behaviors? And there are all kinds of perspectives and theories on why people are motivated to act in certain ways. And sometimes it just depends on what approach you take when it comes to psychology. And in Unit 1, that is something we covered, the different perspectives of psychology. So you'll notice I will start each slide by addressing which perspective each theory takes. So let's just start though with the term motivation. Motivation is just a desire that directs a behavior or a need that pushes you to act in a certain way. So we're going to start with the first theory, which is the instinct theory, and this is going to fall under the evolutionary perspective. And according to the instinct theory of motivation, organisms, people, animals are born with innate and biological tendencies that help them survive. So an instinct is just, it's complex, but it's also unlearned. It's a behavior that did not have to be molded through experience or watched or observed. It's something innate. And typically these types of behaviors are behaviors that help us survive or reproduce. So that's one idea, that people act in ways to survive. Another theory comes from the biological perspective, and this particular theory is called the drive reduction theory. And this theory was created in the 1940s and 1950s by a man named Clark Hull, and he developed this idea based on the concept of homeostasis. And his idea was that humans are acting in ways to maintain homeostasis, and whenever they leave this balance of homeostasis, they start to feel uncomfortable. And when they have this discomfort, he called that a drive, something that is uncomfortable. And he believed that humans are motivated to get rid of that discomfort, and so he called that the drive reduction theory. So this is the idea that we actually have this biological tension when we're not in homeostasis. So if you think of like when you are hungry, that's a tension or it's uncomfortable. Or when you're thirsty, that is a discomfort. And the drive reduction theory says we're motivated to satisfy that need and get rid of that uncomfortable feeling. And so here's an example of that. You can see in this picture we have a woman who is at homeostasis and she is satisfied and fine. But all of a sudden she has this drive, she has a hunger pain. And so she is motivated to reduce that discomfort, and so she then acts in a way to reduce her hunger, and she goes and buys a pretzel. And so the drive reduction theory just says you are motivated to reduce those uncomfortable feelings when you get out of homeostasis, and those uncomfortable feelings he called drives. The next theory is also biological, but we're going to specifically target why people are motivated biologically to eat. But we also know there are all kinds of other factors why people are motivated to eat. There's cultural factors, psychological factors, there's social factors, whether you're at a social gathering and you feel compelled to eat because other people are eating, or maybe there's cultural expectations on cleaning your plate, so you're motivated to clean your plate because of that cultural setting, or possibly psychological factors, whether it's coping with stress or anxiety. But as far as biological, what are the biological reasons for why we eat? Well, we do have to eat to survive. So we are always motivated to eat in order to keep our body functioning. And we actually have to have a certain amount of food intake for energy, even just at our resting point, which is called the basal metabolic rate, which is your body's resting rate of energy expenditure, which even just resting, breathing, sleeping, even at that state, your body has to have energy. And so we're motivated to eat even when we feel like we're not expending energy, we are. For women, the average BMR or basal metabolic rate is it's close to 1,500 calories. And for men, it's a little over 1,600 calories. And so that's just to survive and at the just resting rate. Now, it's also believed that we have a genetic weight that's called a set point where our body desires to maintain. So if we fall below a certain weight, or if we fall below a certain weight, our body is motivated and becomes hungry to get us back to our genetic set point. So the next theory is the optimal arousal theory, and I think this theory can be kind of challenging just because of the words. So I think you can replace the word arousal with stimulation or stress or excitement, and I think that might help better understand this theory. But under this theory, if we are under aroused or we are not very stimulated or excited, we become bored, and it's going to push us to seek out something that is going to stimulate us. On the other hand, though, if we are over aroused, we are going to engage in some kind of behaviors to like reduce our stress and our excitement. And so we're motivated to seek out stimulation to a certain point. If we're overstimulated, we're going to try to reduce that. So there's this optimal level of like stress, excitement that we are motivated to seek out. So if you think of this, for example, I might be motivated to go do something that might be giving me a little bit of excitement, but not too much. So I might be really motivated to go on a run or go to ride a roller coaster. And that might give me this optimal level of arousal, but there's enough stress to perform that behavior, but I would be overly stressed jumping out of an airplane, and I'm going to do anything to get me to that point. Now, there's another part of this optimal arousal theory, so I'll go back and I'll just define that theory one more time. The optimal arousal theory just suggests that humans try to maintain this ideal balance of arousal, of this stress and excitement, and they're not going to want to be too overly stressed and excited, but if they're under aroused, they're going to become bored. So everybody's level is a little bit different, but everyone's going to be seeking this optimal level of arousal. Now there is research to show that there's a certain amount of stress that helps us perform the best. Too much stress and we're going to become very anxious. Not very stressed, we're not even going to be like able to perform that task. And this is the Yerkes-Dodson's law, and this was developed by two psychologists who suggest that there's a moderate level of stress that allows you to have the highest level of performance. And you can see that on this chart here. You can see that there is a point, this medium moderate level of arousal in which you are going to perform your best. And if you think of it like shooting a free throw and you're in a basketball game, if you're not aroused enough, you're going to have a really hard time standing up, and you're going to be, just sleepy and lethargic. But if you are overly aroused and really stressed and shaking, you're going to have a really hard time shooting that free throw. Same thing taking a test. You want to have just enough arousal to perform your best, but too much and too overly stressed, you're not going to perform your best. Next is from the humanistic perspective. This is a theory that was developed by Abraham Maslow, and this theory states that humans must fulfill basic needs first, and you are motivated to act in ways that you fulfill your basic needs before you move on to fulfill higher level needs. And so Abraham Maslow created this pyramid to show which behaviors we will perform first. And so you can see here at the bottom of his pyramid, he has biological and physiological needs. So if we do not have food, or we don't have enough sleep, or we don't have water, we are not going to be motivated to seek out any of these higher level needs. I am not really going to be interested in some of these higher level things. Like, I'm probably not going to be interested in performing well at school if I have not eaten or I have not slept. I'm going to be motivated to fulfill some of these basic needs first. And so Some of these basic needs also will include security, your health, your safety. But then once you have these basic needs met, you're going to feel more motivated to seek out friendships and maybe play in sports and achieve and even meet your highest need of self-actualization, which is reaching your highest potential. So some of these things, if you are able to reach these, that typically means you are fulfilling some of these basic needs first. Next, we have the incentive theory. So an incentive is just a stimulus that motivates a behavior, but the incentive theory itself is rooted in the behaviorist perspective that we are motivated to get reinforcements or to avoid punishments. And this is when students typically really understand well, that you understand a lot of times doing a behavior because of what you're going to get or what you're not going to get. And this really builds off of what we learned with B.F. Skinner and reinforcements and punishments. One step further, though, is adding on to this behavioral perspective is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. An intrinsic motivation is doing a task or a behavior for its own purpose, or you enjoy that and you have interest in it just because of the behavior itself. An extrinsic motivation is a desire to perform a task because of some kind of external factors. Whatever you're going to receive or whether you're going to avoid punishments, that would be an extrinsic motivation. And if the activity itself is rewarding, you're going to want to do that activity. However, according to the over-justification effect, if you are enjoying an activity but then receive a reward for that activity, you are going to be much less likely to enjoy doing that activity for the activity's sake. So extrinsic motivators, when you are receiving these reinforcements, it is going to diminish your intrinsic motivation, and you're really going to only want to continue doing that behavior for the extrinsic motivations. Finally, we have a motivation theory that comes from the cognitive perspective, and this is called cognitive dissonance theory. And this refers to a situation where you have a belief or an attitude about something and then you act in a certain way. And cognitive dissonance is when your belief does not match the behavior you commit or do. And whenever that happens, you have this discomfort. And that is called cognitive dissonance. And the cognitive dissonance theory is basically that if you act in a way that is contrary to your beliefs, you are going to be motivated to do one of two things. You're either going to change your belief system, or you're going to justify your actions, or you're going to act in a new way. So for example, if a person smokes, which is their behavior, and they know their belief or their cognitive belief is that smoking is wrong and it's going to cause cancer, they're going to be in this state of cognitive dissonance, and so they're going to be motivated to either stop smoking or justify their behaviors, or maybe change their behaviors. And I think this can be a kind of a complex theory, but this is something we will also revisit in the social psychology unit. It's a topic that has been developed by Leon Festinger, and it will be something that we return to again. So these were the theories of motivation. So all of them are really different and explain different perspectives of psychology and look at these situations and behaviors in different way, and explains why we act the way we do, whether it is from an instinctual perspective in the evolutionary side, or whether it is from a biological side to reduce the physiological discomforts we have, or whether we act a certain way because we have a genetic set point and so we're motivated to keep that set point, or to seek a certain amount of arousal, or to get reinforcements, or to avoid punishments, whether it's to get basic needs met. There are so many different reasons, but they all take a different viewpoint, kind of depending on what perspective of psychology they come from. So I hope this was helpful in just kind of going over those theories of motivation. Definitely reach out if you have questions, and thank you for your time. See you guys.